Video to give you a briefing about the upcoming geography sixth form trip to Barcelona. This is for all students who are doing geography in the sixth form. It's going to be running from the 18th to the 22nd of October in 2025. So that's the first 5 days at the beginning of half term. The trip is open to all year 12 and 13 students who are studying geography in the sixth form. So if you're in year 12, that's obviously you. If you're in year 11, I think by now you've made your option choices. So this video is just designed to give you a brief sense of what the trip's about, some of the logistics, and just give you some next steps if you're interested. So we're flying most likely out of Heathrow. The flight's just to be confirmed once we have numbers. We will be flying into Barcelona. Although most of the field trips in the city of Barcelona, we will be based in a town called Sitges. On the main map you can see in the southwest corner. For like a geography briefing, you should have at least one map. We're going to be based in Sitges, which is kind of a smaller, quite old, quite picturesque town. It's a beautiful spot. We stay here because we've got the Field Studies Centre is based here. It's slightly quieter place, but more relaxed for a trip, and we can stay right on the beach. So most days we'll be going into Barcelona by coach. We have one day in Sitges doing some coastal stuff. Yeah, so this is kind of the area we're working in. We're going to be using, as I sort of just mentioned there, we're going to be using this really good Field Studies Centre. Now, they specialise in geography. They do some other things. They're exceptionally knowledgeable about the area. They are British, but they're based out in Spain. And they have an excellent knowledge of the place, the history, the identity. They have a really good knowledge of all the different aspects of Barcelona. So once we get there, they are going to be running our day-to-day field work. They're providing the equipment and the teaching and the sort of expertise. Now, in terms of where we're staying, we're going to be staying in the same place we stayed 2 years ago, which is a place called the Hotel Suburb. It's a great spot. It's right on the beach in Sitges, so it's really nice in the evening. We can go down to the beach, we can get an ice cream and have a sort of a game of football. All the food is in the hotel, so the breakfast is this massive buffet they lay on downstairs. They do provide us with a packed lunch, and then in the evening they do dinner. It is situated above a sports bar. So occasionally, if there's any sort of significant sporting events, I think last time it was the Rugby World Cup, we may spend a little bit of time just watching the sport there. But I would say the main thing of the hotel is all the food's there, and it's right on the beach. So just a rough sense of kind of what we're going to be doing. So we've got 5 days. Obviously, first day we're getting there. Then we normally have our first day doing some coastal stuff, which is quite nice because in Sitges, so we haven't got to travel anywhere for that. So just some classic coasts. Now, if you're in year 12, when you go on the trip, you'll be doing coasts at the time, so it's really good. If you're in year 13, it'll be more of a revision of the coastal content, but it's there's some really, really good coastal, both physical and management stuff to look at. Then days 3 and 4 are full days in Barcelona. So they're looking at things like urban regeneration, rebranding, changing identity of different areas. We'll also do a Catalan study. So this idea of Catalan separatism. So we'll do an afternoon doing that. On the final day, there'll be a chance to go into town, do some shopping, have a bit of an explore of some of the places we haven't got to yet. And if you'd like to just have a look, there is on the Kingswood Geography YouTube page, there is a video from our previous trip, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what the places look like and kind of what it's like when you're there. So I guess why Barcelona is a really good question. It's a brilliant place for a sixth form trip. It really, really is. It links to loads of the units of study that you do in year 12. The big one is the Changing Places unit. If you are currently in year 12 and you're watching this video, this is a unit you've just started. Barcelona is quite a key case study for this unit, but it's a really good example of a place with a unique identity, of how that identity has changed and shaped. It's a really good example of a place that has changed from quite a rundown, quite a rough, quite a dangerous place in kind of the 1980s to being an exceptionally successful place, arguably too successful now, it's almost too much tourism. So it's a really good example of that. It's also a very varied place. And we go to very varied places and we look at how within the city there's a real change of identity and culture and perceptions. It's also really good for the Year 12 Power and Borders unit. This is kind of geopolitics. And there's a really interesting debate about the Catalans, about their desire for a sovereign nation. So many Catalans would like Catalonia, which includes Barcelona, to be a separate country, separate state. So we explore why that is, some of the reasons for that, how they've gone about trying to become a separate state. The first time we did the trip, there were actually some really big riots in the city. So yeah, it's a really sort of topical issue. And of course, in Year 12, you'll do a coastal unit. So it's a really good chance to explore coasts and to either learn about or review that content. There's a bit of background here. I won't go through too much of it, but suffice to say, I think Barcelona is just a brilliant place for showing. It's one of the best places in the world for showing how a city can transform its fortunes. In the last sort of 40 years, it's really transformed from being a fairly dangerous place to an exceptionally popular and successful place. So yeah, just a little bit about some of these themes. I mentioned the Catalans. So it's a really interesting example of how sort of Spain was a unified country, but it has areas like Catalonia and the Basque region, both of which fight to different extents for independence. Much of this is played out in Barcelona. And we have a tour guide for an afternoon who is a Catalan, who is superb. Their knowledge, the stories they tell, the way they kind of bring this to life is really, really interesting. So we look at this idea of this kind of sovereignty movement in Catalonia. And again, that's something you're looking at in your Year 12 Power and Borders study. It's just a brilliant city. There's so many themes about urban geography, which if you're in Year 11, you've sort of been doing quite recently. So many themes of urban geography, how architecture, how that's used to shape the identity of the city. I'm sure many of you have seen these, the Gaudi stuff and the architecture, and it's really used to shape the identity. But also things like the Sagrada Familia, the very famous sort of unfinished cathedral. And we'll go and visit that. And again, how much that dominates the skyline and the identity and how much that's used to shape sort of perceptions. Sport is a really interesting one. The 1992 Olympics arguably were the most significant event in Barcelona's sort of modern history. The Barcelona Olympics really showed the world how beautiful it was, the setting, the city in it, and it was a real springboard for the city to become to receive loads of investment, to receive loads of tourism, be really successful. Also, Barcelona FC. So for those of you that are into football, you'll know all about them. But they are a really key factor linked to the Catalan identity. So they really believe in this idea that they're more than a club, that they represent Catalonia. So the way in which the football club is used to shape the identity of the Catalans is actually really interesting. And this is the new camp. I know it's been redone now, but the Mesquite Club is essentially saying it's more than a club, right? It's an identity. It's shaping that kind of Catalan sort of brand, as it were. Really interesting place called the Ravel. So the Ravel typically was quite a rough area, quite a rundown, quite dangerous. It's very like high density housing, sort of very packed in, very narrow streets, and it's now gentrifying really quickly. And it's really interesting because sort of the northern end is more gentrified than the southern end. So as you walk down it, you go from what is quite gentrified, quite trendy, quite cool. There's a university there, and as you sort of go down, it becomes poorer, more rundown, more dangerous. So again, it's a really interesting example of how a place is gentrifying and how street art and sort of the different shops and services are really changing. So yeah, it's a really the Ravel's a very cool, very interesting place, and again, this is going to tie to your case study on Barcelona when you look at it, and it's a really good example of how gentrification has perhaps caused problems. Too much tourism, too many Airbnbs, a loss of that original identity. That's really interesting. No geography field trip would be complete without a day at the coast. Sitges is a beautiful beach. There's loads of sections of the beach which have been managed to a greater or lesser extent. So it's a really good place to crack out some ranging poles, do some beach profiles, look at how management has influenced the flows and stores on the coasts. This is a key unit in the physical paper, so a day at the beach is always really, really helpful. So that was quite a whistle-stop tour of the trip. What I'm looking at doing now is I'm going to send out with this a link and a form with a link, and the link will just have some information about yourself. So your name is on his passport details, any dietary issues. You've got a couple of weeks now to decide if this is something you'd like to do. If you'd like to come, please fill in that link in the next 2 weeks. The estimated cost is between £950 and £1,000. That includes everything. Except you're spending money, but that includes everything, so that's all it needs to be. The exact cost will be dependent on the number of students, so I can't give you an exact cost right now, but once I have the number of students, I can get an exact cost. So yeah, if you fill in that form, if you have any questions, please do email me. I've rushed through some stuff, but hopefully you have a flavour and a sense of it. So yeah, if you can fill in the form, and then the week after that deadline, I will then contact those people that have filled in the form with more information, exact cost, exact payment details, and some key next steps. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we will see you in Barcelona in October.